Hello, friends. It's Jewel here. Welcome to this edition of the Tuesday night live stream. Big stuff for you this week. So we're going to walk through another success story, and I'm going to introduce you to Marlene, and we're going to talk about how she landed a VP role. It took exactly 6 weeks, and I'm going to let Marlene tell you about the place where she's ended up working. It is literally world class. It is literally number one. And I am so excited to have her here to share this story with all of us. If you have questions, you can go ahead and drop them right in the comments, and I will go ahead and pass those along. So I'll be able to see you in the chat. And as long as you can see me and hear me just fine, feel free to give us some likes and love. And we're going to go ahead and jump right in. So Marlene, I sort of spilled the beans, but I'll ask you to share your big news anyway. So what do we want to let the people in on today?
Hi, Joel. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure being here and just as rewarding as working with you over the last couple of months. So thank you very much. So I am 4 weeks now relocated to LA from Charlotte, North Carolina, previously Miami, and absolutely loving it. Took a new role at SoFi Stadium as a VP of Guest Experience after 15 years with the Charlotte Hornets. And of the 15, I was in a VP role, director and VP role for about 13. So I was recently promoted to 2019 to senior VP. And so it was just very rewarding to be making this leap back to stadium, because I really started my sports career with football in stadiums, and then went to arena, the Miami Heat, and then the Charlotte Hornets, and now I'm back in the stadium environment. So it feels like I'm going home.
And tell us about the stadium, because it's brand new. There's some noteworthy things happening. So what's going on there?
It's brand new, state of the art, located on 298 acres. Not only do we have the stadium, we have 2 NFL teams playing in the stadium. So we have the Rams and the Chargers. We also have YouTube Theater, where it's activated for small concerts, Latin shows, just different things. We also have the NFL Network studio on property, and we're building residence and retail stores, movie theaters, just like a whole urban development. And it's in the heart of Inglewood, California. So great opportunity to connect with the community and hire from the community. It's just been wonderful. The stadium in itself, it's just beautiful. It's everything, all the latest bells and whistles, Wi-Fi technology, and it's tremendous. I remember when I saw the job description, I'm like, I can do this with my eyes closed. And after the first week, I was like, holy crap. It's literally 5 times the size of the building I'm coming from, which factored into my decision, right? Because I'm coming from a position as SVP to VP, which on paper, it could seem like I'm being downgraded, but the scope of the work is so much more, it's so much bigger, so much more challenging than I even anticipated, but I am so excited about the journey.
So tell us a little bit of backstory. First of all, what were you doing or even thinking about in job search before you and I got together and did the perfect job solution? Give us like the precursor to the story first, please.
Yeah. So probably about 3 years ago, I had this, like voice told me, start packing up, downsizing, time to transition. And I'm like, oh, no. Life is great. I'm comfortable. Everyone knows me. I'm doing a great job, won many awards. So, I mean, I had no reason to leave except for the fact that my daughter lives in LA. And she was about to get married. And so I, making this decision. Of course, COVID made the decision for me, because once we went into shelter in place and not having any, family structure there in LA, it was alarming. It was like, what do you mean I can't go on a plane to see my daughter? So the wheels started turning, and I'm like, what would that life look like? Where would I find a job? All the questions, right? Who's going to hire me at my age? Who is going to this? Who's going to that? So went in and whipped out the good old resume, and it was so outdated, so antiquated, didn't have a LinkedIn page, nothing. And you know how the algorithms get you. So something popped up in my feed for an executive recruiter. I reached out to them. We talked, redid my resume, did my LinkedIn page, and I thought it was great. And so, started having conversations, just, soft feelers and stuff, but no call back, nothing. And I was one day in the midst of my frustration, venting to a friend of mine, Ebony, and she said, "Oh, you should try Joel." And I'm like, "Okay, I already paid for this." All the sorry story about why I'm not going to spend more money. And then, of course, I reached out to Joel, and then we talked, and I'm like, "Of course, I'm going to spend my money with her." And so we connected and we started working together. And I have to tell you, when I got off the phone with you, Joel, I started crying because I got off the phone with you and then you sent me the draft. And I said, where did she get this information from? Right. But you ask a lot of questions. And in my head, I'm like, you're writing a resume. Like, do I need to engage down this road? But you were able to create such a story that I did not even believe it was me. And so I'm reading it and I'm like, yeah, but I've done that. Yeah, I've done that. And what I found in that moment is that we undersell, right? Because we feel like if we boast, it's not going to seem real. But in reality, we invested and we put in the work. And so we should talk about it. The challenge is, how do we talk about it? How do we create a story? And that's what you did. And so, when you said read it over and get it back to you, I think I took 2 or 3 days because I was trying to figure out how to cut some stuff out of it so it doesn't look too boastful. But I left it and I trusted your judgment and we went with it. You redid my LinkedIn page. And, I started it went from me getting manufacturing hits on LinkedIn to me getting like real time service hits on LinkedIn. Obviously, I wanted to be in LA, so I didn't really pursue a lot of those until a friend reached out to me and like, the perfect job just got posted for you. And I'm like, what? And even then, I was a little hesitant because I was kind of like in a zone with my daughter's wedding. But I went ahead and did the application, and then they reached out to the extent that they sent me an email that I didn't see because I wasn't checking emails. I kind of went on a media blackout to focus, just like really, give her my 100% attention. And they called me, tracked me down, called me. And when I said, I apologized, of course, and said, I'm in the midst of this wedding, I'm so sorry. They were so nice. She's like, we're willing to wait. When is the wedding? I told her, she said, we'll contact you after the wedding. So obviously the meat of my resume really sparked that conversation and got them engaged.
This is exactly how this story should play out, because what I want to emphasize to you, friends, is how important it is to craft the story the right way.
Mhm.
So, Marlene's just talking about how she already had a resume professionally done before, already had LinkedIn done before. But guess what, friends? There's a real simple litmus test for you to determine, hey, is this resume working for you? Are you getting calls back? That's it. I don't care how it looks, how pretty it is, how many keywords, how much of this, how much of that. The job of the resume is to get the calls. So, in putting together the presentation for Marlene, what I really concentrated on was her signature story. Your signature story, friends, has three pillars: who you are, what you do, and the value you bring. All of those things are interwoven. The resume is not just, this history lesson, because that's not interesting. The resume is not the presentation of you from graduating high school all the way through today. So it's really important that that story go together the right way. The other thing that I want to touch on is In the Perfect Job Solution program that I did with Marlene, after we do the signature story, then it becomes a matter of who are you going to put that story in front of.
Mhm.
Now, the purpose of the resume is to get the calls, but the calls have to be the right calls, right? So, Marlene getting calls about manufacturing jobs before we did this process together, that doesn't help. So, the calls that come into you need to be correct. That has to do with who you're putting the story in front of. And that's exactly what I guide you to do. Now, Marlene, in your case, you had a friend point out this opportunity. Tell us a little bit more about how this particular job came about from the beginning of that part of the story.
So I'm know finding out that he saw it on Teamwork Online, which is a website online program, sports teams, a job board that they use to post open positions. So he saw it, sent it over to me, and said, "This, I read this, and it fits you perfectly." And this particular gentleman, Chris Bryant, I've worked with him for years. He did our service program in Charlotte. I've referred him to other resources, and he's just wonderful. And so, I didn't do it initially when he sent it. And then he said, like, "Hey, did you do it as yet?" And, I said, "Oh, I forgot." So I went on and did it. And so one of the things you talked about is reading the job posting carefully to ensure that the questions you're answering, you're pulling from the first sentence of the job posting and connecting your experience to that first sentence of what, the key words they're asking for, because it's usually the most important. So I, was very intentional in reading the job description and really, and the portions where I was allowed to free writing information and answering questions, tied it back to the job description. So I find that was very helpful. It was a very helpful tip, because before it would have just been, and I think that's why I kept getting like all these operations job, because operations, it's one of the pillars in my experience. So of course, when you have it out there, that's what you keep getting. With this role, because it emphasized a lot on leadership and the experience of working previous Super Bowl, because that's one of the big things they're hosting in February. So, I immediately, and I think yep, I'm pretty sure I reached out to you, Joel, to say, "Hey, how do I position this?" And we moved all the Super Bowls that I worked to the top of my resume. And so I think that was also a great pull once I got in, because throughout all my interviews, in which there were several interviews, several conversations, that came up, like, how did you do credentialing? How do you do this? How do you prepare the staff? How do you? So, it's trying to find exactly what they're looking for, understanding the venue, the location, the venue in my case, but the role that they're looking for, and using what you have in your resume to connect to that.
Yes, yes. And really, what you're talking about also is, recalibrating the resume to some degree to make it
Mhm.
match that particular opportunity. One of
Right.
the things that I do in Matchmaker is make sure your resume matches every opportunity. And that's because, it's important for you to speak their language. And for this particular stadium, they want to know about your Super Bowl experience. Obviously, that's huge. Some other opportunity, some other stadium may have wanted you to emphasize something else. I mean, all of these are still pillars, all of these are still fundamental to your signature story, but it's a matter of recalibrating that story based on the particular audience. And in my professional opinion, you only have an audience of one. There's one person, there's maybe one panel of decision makers, there's one organization, there's one employer. So you don't have to be all things to all people at every single moment, but you need to craft like the voice of what you're saying to that audience at that time. And that's exactly what you did. Now, tell us about the time frame. You said that they had called, but you were planning your daughter's wedding and all of that. When do you think it was? What do you think the time frame was from when you applied to when they either emailed you or called you, but reached back out to you? How long did that take?
So just tracking the email, they actually reached out to me a week after. And I did, of course, I didn't see the email. And then I got a call the following week. So it was about 2 weeks before we actually made contact. And then they waited a week for me to get through the wedding. And then also our first interview started, I would say 3 weeks after I applied. And then,
Now, go ahead,
go
go ahead.
ahead. No, go
I was
ahead.
going to say, I was going to say, start to take us through the interview process, because I want to know, what did you learn or what kind of takeaways did you have from our work together that maybe you didn't use before? And I'm asking the question this way for this reason. You were already a director, an SVP, and all of that. So you're not brand new to all of this. You
Mhm.
and I did not start our interview training with, tell me about yourself, strengths and weaknesses. We didn't start all the way at ground zero, but you did really well in your interview. So, what I want to know is, can you share a takeaway that you learned that maybe you did differently this time or did better this time that really helped move you through the process?
So I'll tell you a funny story. 2020, I was connected with someone with an organization that I am like, it's like, it would have been my dream job to work with them. So I'm not going to say the name right now because, and she called and she said, well, tell me about yourself. We had a 30-minute call, and it started late because, she was delayed and stuff like that. But so let's use the 30-minute window. We had a 30-minute window. And she's like, well, tell me about your background and everything. And I was just I mean, obviously, I've had years of experience, over 30 years in sports and all that stuff. And I was just babbling, really. And when I got out, she's like, okay, I'll be in touch with you. Never. I mean, I've called back. I sent a thank you note. I like all the things. I tracked them, what they were doing, and when they had their, victories and wins. I would like, congratulations. To this day, never heard anything. And one of the things in her profile was she pride herself on paying it forward and mentoring and all this. And I even reached out and said, hey, I know I didn't do well. What tips do you have for me? I still haven't heard anything. And so one of the things I took from you in our conversation was storytelling. And you said to me, you have, anyone can answer a question, right? Because we know what the answer is going to be. We know what the question, so you're kind of trained. And so you encouraged me to bring my authentic self and use storytelling to craft my answers. And so that was very important from the first interview. And I could tell I just made that connection because in my storytelling, she would also share her storytelling. And then, my second interview was with the person I'm reporting to, and which was a different interview. It wasn't a sit down, it was walk, let's walk. And being prepared is important. Lucky, I mean, I didn't have any interview clothes. I came to California for a wedding, so never one that didn't like shopping. So I ran out and got a blazer. I already had some ivory pants that I figured I could wear. And, I had some really dressy sneakers. And luckily I wore sneakers because the interview was a walk-in interview. Just
Great.
walking up the stairs, down the stairs, walking. Thank God I was working out, and or else I would have passed out. But it was a walk-in interview, just asking questions as if I'm the neighbor next door that you're
Yeah.
showing the neighborhood, right? So again, storytelling, because as something was pointed out, it wasn't really asking me directly how you would address it, but like, for instance, trash on the ground. And I can say, oh yeah, that's a big pet peeve for me. And everyone should be picking up trash regardless of your title, for instance. And then I could tie it into a story and how I
Yes.
incorporated that in our guest services training program. So it was hit like this. But I interviewed with 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 into 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? But all different interviews. One in particular came on and said, I've read your resume. I've been in this business a long time, so I have reached out already to individuals. You're highly regarded, highly recommended. So I don't want to know about work. I want to know about you from high school to now. No one's ever
That's
asked me that.
excellent, excellent. The resume already told him what he needed to know. He already went around and got the references, basically, is
Mhm.
what he did before he
Right,
even talked to you. And so
right,
by asking you that question, he wanted to know you as the human being, right?
right.
Okay. All right.
And
Excellent.
what drove me? What
Yeah.
was that driving force behind who I am and, my passion to do certain things. And at the end of the interview, he said, now I understand your mindset and
Yes.
how you would work in this environment, what it means to you and why you want this challenge. Another one, I was actually invited to a game and we were just at the game and he is like the boss. And only thing he said to me is like, how many times have you traveled to LA? Because remember, my whole thing was I want to move for my daughter. So I guess he was trying to figure out is what do you know about LA coming from Charlotte, right? And so for me, of course, I could again story tell around when I brought my daughter here for junior year and she said, this is where I'm coming when I leave college. And I was like, yeah, no, she's not. And just tell that story about her leaving like 4 days after graduation, never to return.
Mm,
And I'm like, so she is like embedded in the community here and her job, she's tied to the community here and what she does. This is the industry. And so I have been visiting and following for the past 6, 7 years and, was able to share some of the places that I've visited, some of the activities that I've done when I'm out here. So, it legitimize what I was saying about why I wanted to move. So it's having these things at the front of your mind versus just saying to him, oh, I've been here 10 times, you know,
yes.
what
Yes.
10
Yes.
times to do what? But I was able to show him, like I've gone hiking here, I've gone to the beach here, I've gone here, I've gone here, I've gone to Santa Barbara, I've gone here. So, at the end, he was like, wow, you're almost like a resident here already, kind of thing.
That's good. That's good. You were able to be your authentic self. So
Yeah,
when we, get to the point of interview training, salary training, I call that mastering your meeting. And I must say, out of all the different interview types that I tend to go over, I'm going to have to add that walking interview into the repertoire because I can completely see that happening. Of course,
yeah,
walking around the stadium, and then, for most people who work in a quote unquote regular office, sure, you can walk and talk down the hall or whatever it is. So you were able to really be at ease and be authentic. Sometimes I think, even when I say the word authentic, people kind of stiffen up a little bit because it's like, oh, how do I be authentic?
yeah,
No, yeah. Authentic is not a thing. You don't have to make it up. What you have
right.
to do, relax and
Hmm.
let yourself come out and
Right.
let your stories come out. When
Hmm.
you're talking about work, you don't have to make things up. You are already an experienced person, director, SVP level. You've been doing this for 30 years. It's not like you have to make things up. You have the stories. It's just a matter of, okay, deciding what stories you're going to put on the forefront of your mind that you
Right.
can pull and then start answering the question, but answering it always with story. So it still goes back to step one, the signature story. And
Hmm.
then step two, who are you telling that story to? And then
Right.
step three, how are you using that story in your interview? And that's what you're talking about, the entire through line here.
Right.
So how did it feel to hear the offer? What happened with the negotiations? What happened with the salary? What do you want to tell us about that?
So, of course, the offer comes in, you have to negotiate because, it wasn't what I anticipated. And I reached out to you. And again, you remind me of selling what you bring to the table. So
Yes.
I was able to go back with that and say, hey, I'm bringing all these things. I'm not just, one thing. I can be three things to the company. How do we incorporate this to make it beneficial to both of us? And so that worked out really well. And I was able to, get comfortable salary that would, be beneficial. But also, even though I was coming in when technically their business year already started, I was able to get into the bonus program. So I will still be eligible for bonus, and I'll still be eligible for consideration for promotion or widen scope of work. So, it's what's important to you. What was important to me, it was not a title. It was just being in an environment where I would be able to showcase what I do and just live that passion out. Because I always say, for me, working in sports is just like a kid in a candy store. If I could do it for free, I would, but I have bills to pay, so please pay me. So that's always my signature line. But I love what I do. And the opportunity to work on this platform at this scale was very gratifying for me. So it wasn't about being a VP, SVP. Being a VP, it's just quite fine. I don't even care what you call me, actually, just pay me. So, it was good. So I'm glad for everything, how it worked out. Obviously, I had to relocate. And it was a very generous relocation package, because initially I thought, because they knew I wanted to move, they would let me pay for my own relocation, but they didn't. It was everything, my car, my furniture, everything was paid for. So it worked out really well. And I appreciate your guidance through the process.
Well, you're very, very welcome. Why don't we close with how you feel? And I want you to talk about the evolution of emotion. So tell me about, how the job search process was having you feel before you came to me, while you were with me, and now you're in the job. Is it 2 weeks now or 3 weeks in the job?
Next Wednesday will be 4.
Next Wednesday, 4 weeks. So I want to know how that feels. So take me down the through line of emotion, and we'll close with that.
So of course, this is what I will say to anyone that's job searching, right? It's a time of anxiety, because if you're working, you're still doing your job and you're looking. If you're not working, you're wondering, when is it going to happen for me? And for me, I found the thing that I learned, right? One day I was doing my devotion, and a voice said to me is, you have to trust the process by being patient and waiting for what's coming to you. And it's like bigger than you can even imagine. And so while I lean on you for prep, I also leaned on my faith to lead me into the right position, because, bigger than I could even imagine, I did not envision SoFi Stadium, honestly, because I kept saying, what could be bigger and better than what I have now? Because I was just thinking another arena stuff. I was also talking to another company, which it would be more of an administrative role, not so much the role it was in that. And I was like, okay, I'll take it. I can adjust my emotion and I can make it work. And it never materialized. So for me, it's what was meant to be, that you're going to walk into it at the opportune time. And you just, to me, it's very important to me. You got to trust the process and be patient. And whatever it is, where you pull your faith from, whatever you call that, is really tapping into that faith. So before I talked to you, of course, I was at a state of hopelessness, because I'm like, when is this going to happen for me? Who is going to call me? What's going to be better than what I have? I'm doomed. Yeah. And you're in COVID. I'm in COVID, right? And live by myself. So I'm hearing all these things talking back to me, just relax yourself. This is it. You're doomed. And then I met you. And then, so now there is this emotion of me looking at this resume and this person that is larger than life than I even imagine. So now I had to merge my confidence with my resume. I had to match it, because now I had this first class resume, but second class confidence. So I had to really work on matching it up. So when I spoke to my experience and my story, I could say it authentically because I believed it, right? So that was the second thing. And then, of course, when I started going through the process and, just every time someone came on to interview me, they were so excited. They're like, I can't believe we're talking to you. And I'm like, I can't believe you're talking to me. And so it was just this, I'm like, they were just like so excited, so giddy. And I'm like, okay, like, I am just glad you're talking to me because there is no one else in the pipeline right now. So I went through that feeling of being more empowered each time I spoke to someone and more confident each time I spoke to someone that it was the right role. And then, of course, you go through the whole resignation thing at your job and, you know, like packing to move to LA. I call it moving to the little people house. I kept saying, I need to give this away. It's little people living. It's like little people living. So you go through this emotion. I flew out in one day to find an apartment. I had to look at like 6 places, made a decision literally at 6 o'clock, got on a flight at 10 o'clock, went back to Charlotte and just waited for the offer because I didn't have the final offer then. We were still negotiating. And then the offer came, and then it was time to get everything packed up, going through hearing like, oh, we can't move you for a month. And I'm like, everything's been going great so far. It will work out. And then I finally found a mover that said, hey, can get you there in 10 days. Pick up the car, we'll get you there in 10 days. And so that happened, came in, stayed in a hotel for a little bit, which at first I thought was fun. And then I'm like, no, I need to get out of this room. But walking into the building, it was just larger than life because, I'm used to making several lap with 4 floors at the Hornets at the Spectrum Center. This is like 8, like nothing you could even imagine. Still don't know my way around, but I remember, of course you're excited going in, right? And I'm like, I can do this job with my eyes closed. And after I think because I started on a Wednesday, we had a game on the Sunday. And I remember walking out and like, holy shit, what did I get myself into? I'm sorry, I'm cursing. Like, holy crap, what did I get myself into? This thing was just so humongous. But then I reflect on our journey and I'm like, you got this. Everything that's here for you to do, you're just doing it on 5 times the scale. So I'm settled. I feel so much more settled in. I spent the first 3 weeks just connecting with the team, doing some team building activities, getting to know them, allowing them to get to know me. Again, bringing my authentic self, just talking about life and what it means to be here. And so I think we have a real great connection. I have a wonderful team. We're ramping up. So we're in the process of filling like 3 positions and we're hitting the ground running. I told someone recently, I don't feel like I go to work because I get up and I see palm trees. I'm sorry, everyone's so relaxed. It's a heavy lift. I mean, we have the Super Bowl in February. We have a lot of work to get done. It's our first year fully operational, so everything is new. But it's just a wonderful environment. I mean, I live in a beach community, and so it's really thrilling. As I sit in my office talking to you, and I look out, I can see the mountains. I mean, like, what a life, but every day I get up and I'm just grateful. I give gratitude because it wasn't coincidence that we were connected. It just all came together and I really followed the path you laid out for me. And I still remember we talking about the interview question and you're like the frog leap method, how you connect 1 to 2 to 3. And I'm like, frog leap girl, frog leap girl. Frog leap, like frog leap girl, frog leap girl, So those are the 2 things, like connect to the first sentence and frog leap in your answer and just keep it, concise, even though I'm not like short right now. But in the process, it worked out really well. And funny story, when you talk about the experience, day 3, it took me 30 minutes to get out of the building, just from my office to get out. I could not find my way out of the building. And then I saw 2 gentlemen and I was like, hey, I'm trying to get out. They're like, oh, we could go this way. And they took me up the stairs. I got to the top of the stairs. I could not even breathe. It's like, oh my God, isn't there an elevator in space? But I'm doing better. I'm doing better. I'm learning. I walk
Good.
around with papers and cheat sheets. I take pictures like I'm at this section and this is where I need to get back to in order to get down here. So it's a learning process, but I'm loving it so much. So thank you again.
I love this entire story, friends. And here's something that I really want to emphasize. As we listen to Marlene's story, Marlene has now stepped up into this stadium. It's 4 times the size of the last arena where she was working. These folks are hosting the Super Bowl. It is the largest stadium on earth. So, really, what I want to say in listening to her talk about this is the work that I do with you, it's not that it's just a resume, a LinkedIn profile. Let's talk to a couple people. Of course, you are getting a resume. Of course, you're getting a LinkedIn profile. Of course, I'm going to give you language so that you can start the conversations with the relevant people. Obviously, all of those things are happening. But what this really is about is me positioning you to step up into the thing that you already deserve in
Mhm,
your life and in your career. That's what all of this work is about. Everything that I do, they're pieces. Everything that I give you, they're strategies. But this is really about fulfilling the vision.
mhm,
Okay. Marlene had a vision. She wants to live where her daughter lives. That's where she wants the next phase of her life to be. That's where her family is, all of that. So you have to think about, what is that vision for you? The vision's not, I need a new resume. That's not the vision. Of
mhm,
course, you do need those things. But what I really, really like about this story is that it's an example of how I'm able to position you to walk directly into the thing that is for you.
mhm.
That's what I hope that you take away from this story, among several other points. But I
Yeah.
feel like that's the grand point. Marlene, why don't you go ahead and close us out?
Speaking of vision, as I'm unpacking, I unpacked my vision board. And, of course, I have to put everything back together because you pack everything moved. And one of the cards on my vision board was move to LA, get a new job, kick ass salary, be with my daughter. And I said, are you kidding me? Like, I believe in vision boards, right? Because everyone said to write a vision board. And I said, you have got to be kidding me. And my daughter, she was on the phone. I called her. I said, can you believe this? She said, when did you write it? And I turned the card over. I wrote it in 2019.
And here we are, 2021, and literally every
Check,
single thing you
check,
had a vision
check,
about,
check.
this is now your reality. We are
Yes.
going to leave it there. Thank you. Thank you, Marlene, for sharing
Thank
this
you for
story with
having
us.
me.
Absolutely. Friends, I hope you got some really, really good takeaway points. And we are going to close it out from here. Thank you for joining us for this
Thanks,
edition of
Joel.
the Tuesday night live stream. And I'll see you all in the group next week.
Thank you.